That era, you, Stevie G, Rio, Ashley Cole, the disconnect between the Manchester United players and the Chelsea players and potentially the Liverpool players, and the antipathy that there was because you were competing against each other on a weekly basis, and you never, in Rio's perspective, you never came together as a team or as a squad. Fair?
Yeah. Fair. Certainly it's true to a degree. I think it's been taken slightly too literally, because you almost get the impression of us all sitting in a room not talking to each other, and it certainly wasn't like that. But there was an air of that. Human nature means that when I go to and sit and have lunch or mill around the hotel, I probably hang around with John Terry, Joe Cole, Ashley Cole, whoever might be my team. Same for everyone. We were all very synonymous with our teams. We felt very strongly about them. Us, Chelsea, Steven Gerrard and Carragher, Liverpool, blah, 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 Manchester United. And so there is a human nature effect that kicks in that we actually never really got to grips with enough. And I think that's probably all our faults, personally, because as you mature as a man or woman, you kind of realise, you know, at 20, you quite happily sit in your little group. At 30 and now nearly 40, you see things differently. So we all made that mistake. Probably the management didn't really tackle that well enough. And it was one part of the jigsaw that was slightly out of place. And I always imagined, I remember the Argentinian playing with Crespo, and he was at Chelsea, and I actually used to get the how desperate he was to leave Chelsea to go back to the Argentinian squad. So I'm going to go back there, and we've got this Copa America thing or whatever it might have been, because they're all playing all over the world, and they all come back, and it's like, here we go. Whereas we were at loggerheads, you know, and so that was like a factor in the whole thing. But it wasn't the only factor. There were plenty of factors. Personal accountability from all of us. Didn't play as well as we did for our teams. We lost the battle in midfield constantly for not putting enough numbers in there. Constantly, like all of us will pick our teams now for the World Cup, and we'll probably have 3 in midfield or whatever it might be. We certainly won't have 2 and then vacate the rest of the area. And we used to have 2 against 4 or 5. The Spanish ones would all come in there, you know, and we couldn't get near anybody. And it was frustrating. So how am I supposed to recreate what I'm doing at Chelsea when we had 3, or for Steven Gerrard when he had 3 or played off the front? Then when you're playing against, you know, 3, 4 great Spanish midfield players who are brilliant at keeping the ball. So retrospectively, we were probably never gonna threaten winning anything. I think we actually did okay getting to the quarterfinals. So and it's just not on tactics; that's on our own, all those bits. So there's definitely been a progression to where we are now, because we're seeing it all differently. And that Gareth and the DNA thing is certainly progressed that.
You know, you would have seen Gareth up in close quarters, I guess. Do you like the way that he's handling himself and the squad at the moment?
Yeah, he's been brilliant. There's no doubt. As it stands at the moment, he's had a great tournament. Obviously, do you know what I mean? He has, to the point. He couldn't have announced it any better. I think this decision slightly fell on his lap, albeit they weren't easy ones, because as Neil said, those senior players, there aren't senior players. He's picked the ones that should go. Joe Hart as a third goalkeeper, you know, we can all argue it or not, but it's a third goalkeeper, potentially. And Jack Wilshere's had a load of injury problems. So I think, I don't know who the other ones are, senior players. So the squad is there for him to pick, but he's picked it. He spoke brilliantly. He's promoted youth. I actually haven't heard all his quotes. I heard one quote on the radio earlier, and he said about you need to know your strengths and know your weaknesses. And our strength are the pace and ability of our attack-minded players. So we're going to try and by nature he's saying our defence is our weakness. So we're going to try and secure that and let them boys go. And I thought it was a perfect way of putting it.
Did you worry about the reaction? Right? You always struck me as somebody who was incredibly level-headed, somebody who could see the wider picture. Did you feel that pressure of expectation, be it from the fans at home, be it from the media, be it from yourself, going into a World Cup tournament?
Yes, yeah, without a doubt. With England, it's a different ballgame. I never felt it at Chelsea, and you don't, it becomes your home. Fortunately for me, that was all good, and which really helps, obviously. But with England, going into it, playing the friendlies before it, every England game actually, and then the World Cup is like the biggest level of all of it, because you know the media were harsh. I agree. 2006 was harsh. 2010, I don't remember the fallout so much, but the negativity of every press conference was like, wow, it was like going into a war zone, sitting there trying to like battle questions about whether John Terry likes the training or the captaincy, this, and who's got the ump, and why isn't he not playing? And like you come out of it, and that was as hard as the game. Do you know what I mean? Because you knew, like, wow, if I say the wrong word here, yeah, it was hard though, because if you say the wrong word, then we've all got Sky Sports on later on with all the lads, and they go like, Frank said that John Terry should be captain again. And like, it's a nightmare. So it was really hard. And
did you enjoy it? Did you ever enjoy it?
I didn't really enjoy it, and that's one of my regrets, if you can call them that. I enjoyed Euro 2004. It went well for me personally. It went well for everyone. But I was so focused and so determined that when I knew that I wasn't playing so well, which I didn't in World Cups, I was on myself, and then everything else comes into play. And you know, like nobody is immune to it. If everybody's honest, everybody will say it. Everybody who's been in those England squads will say it. And that's why I felt sorry for the lads against Iceland, because I watched it, and as soon as it went 2-0 and I could see people playing sideways like 5 yards and hiding a little bit, I was like, oh, this is a nightmare. There's no chance we'll turn this around, because they're already thinking about Daily Mail Online going, oh dear. Do you know what I mean? But that's, you know, they're all human. But I think the perception's changed. I think that all the expectancies come down. Players have to be big boys too, so we shouldn't cry our eyes out because you're playing for your country, and it's the same in Italy, and it's the same in Spain, and it's the same in Germany or wherever it is, and we didn't really perform, so it's easy to say now, but as a young 20-odd-year-old, when you come back from World Cup, we got sang at every ground for that after 2006, every ground, let your country down, everywhere. There were like 4 or 5 of us in the team at Chelsea, and it just used to be a crescendo every ground. You'd let our country down and all that. Like, I couldn't put it above playing for Chelsea, because Chelsea felt like my family, and England was my country. I'm trying to sound really corny, if you know what I mean, but because you're there every day and you play, so like playing the Champions League final for Chelsea was certainly, I don't think could have been surpassed by playing in the World Cup final. Take all the crap out of it. Sorry, crap's not really a swear word. No. But if you take the crap out of it about all the negative things I'm saying, I don't mean them, because I'm not saying pulling England down by saying that. I expected that to come with it, and it came. And playing for your country is amazing, amazing. Playing your debut, whatever game you play for your country is amazing. But for me, playing for my club was up there with it, because I felt it. I was very fortunate, actually. It's probably for people to play a long time at their club. So the pinnacle of my career was the Champions League final. If I'd have got to an England World Cup final, I might say something slightly different. But I'm not pandering to the crowd. I'm really not, because it's actually just how I felt.
Yeah.
Can I just ask how it felt that day up at the Grove? I don't know if you remember, but it might have been your 100th cap when we spoke to you on a Sunday up at the Grove, and we trawled through your international career. Can you remember what it was like to talk historically about some of the moments that you'd had in your career? Because you were being asked to comb through it.
Well, immensely proud. I suppose the pure fact as well that there weren't that many moments that I could say that was that great. We won, you know. It was like, so like when I think about the Euro 2004, and it feels really special to me. And then when I think about 2006, it doesn't. And I don't mean, you know, I'm still playing for my country. It's the same thing, but it wasn't successful. So I'm probably speaking I had a lot of success at Chelsea, and it probably just changes my mind. But no doubt, playing for your country it's obviously up there. My debut was a huge moment for my family. 100 caps was a huge moment. I don't look back on any regrets with England. I just look back at pride of playing 106 times or whatever. And it does mean a lot, because, you know, when you retire, you realise you step outside the Chelsea bubble, and you realise that, you know, and now we travel around in different teams, and that people respect you for playing for England. A lot of people come up and say, I loved you for England, didn't like you for Chelsea, and that sort of stuff. And that's the nature of it.
I'm partly because, I don't know, this is the question maybe. Does defeat for England, your country, hurt more than defeat for your club?
It's the same answer. It was the same defeat. Going home from World Cups was absolutely horrible, but coming off the pitch in Russia, having lost to Manchester United in the Champions League final, was absolutely horrible. Do you know what I mean? There isn't much in it. They're both. When you're professional and you're an athlete and you work as hard as you can, you want to get in your Chelsea team, you want to get in the England team, and then when you play at the top game that there is, it's the same disappointment. And you know what? The funny thing about football is you come home and then it all starts again next season, and then it all carries on, and then you put perspective on the whole thing. But yeah, I think it was just the same, I think.
obviously there was the well-known mantra that Lampard and Gerrard can't play together, and Frank touched on the fact that the Spanish midfield was so packed. What midfield do you think you could have played in with the personnel that were available that would have been able to compete with the Spanish?
Well, if you're going to compete, then you need to have. Well, I would have played 3 midfield players, and I would have played an Owen Hargreaves or Michael Carrick or Paul Scholes in the earlier days, because he'd already started to retreat to a deep midfield player for Manchester United. So I think it was quite easy. And actually, in honesty, we generally in my career only had one centre forward focal point who was like a shoo-in, which was either Michael Owen or then Wayne Rooney. So when as you know, we kind of paired Peter Crouch with Emile Heskey and the like. So it was actually crying out to be done. And then you would ask your wide players to also come and get involved inside. You know, at times, you have a Joe Cole used to play on the wing and come and get involved. And our attributes, I think, were there to do it. So I would have, take your pick. That's the thing. We wouldn't have this problem if you couldn't. I've just pulled out 3 there that I think could have done the job very, very well. And it would have been completely how we all wanted to play. If myself and Steven are playing in midfield for England without anybody behind us, and you had to always worry about where he was in relation to me to be able to make your natural run. So the worst thing in football is when you start second guessing your movement, because it's so fast that when you wait, you can't arrive. So it was an absolute no-brainer to me, looking back, that we didn't do it. I mean, Sven sort of played with the diamond in 2004 going into it, but nobody wanted to be at the back end of it. So
this sounds like a really stupid question. Did you ever get coached to play in the 2?
Yeah, and growing up, you was only in the 2.
No, but I mean for England.
Yeah, Fabio Capello used to do it, but a lot of it would be on your defensive responsibility, and he always wanted one of you to see the number on the back of the other one. So a lot of the time it was myself and Stephen or Gareth Barry, and I started to go in and out of the team with it actually, but one of us would be on the angle behind the other one in a defensive situation. So rather than me thinking of freedom to go forward, I'm thinking I better be able to see the number in his shirt. So Fabio would do it, and it actually made us pretty hard to beat at times and pretty organised. But when you're worrying about those, those details, as opposed to saying, well, why don't you just sit Gareth in there and let us play? As I say, we brought Emile Heskey back into the team. No disrespect, but Rooney had plenty in his game to play that as a one-off on his own. But Fabio Capello was a 4-4-2 man, like forever, and you wouldn't be telling him to change to a 3 in midfield. Do you know what I mean? He'd just say, well, I'm going to change, but it's you I'm changing. That's it. Do you know what I mean? That's it.